What's the scariest you've ever acted towards another human being? Story 1. This happened not even a half hour ago, as I am typing this from an airport terminal with my heart still pounding and a grin on my face. Before I passed through the checking, I decided to take a bathroom break. Number 2. Inside the stall, there was a distinct lack of hooks, so I instead draped my jacket over the door and thought nothing of it. Now I was just wiping up when I felt somebody enter the bathroom. Then I heard a pair of feet walk in front of my stall. Then I saw someone peek under the door. My legs snapped closed, but the face was gone as soon as it was there. Then my jacket was gone as well. The man had pulled it from the door. Now, had it just been my jacket, I might have cursed the guy to seven hells, finished my business, and reported the offense. But my boarding ticket was in the pocket. This changed the game completely. Pants still around my ankles, I was up in a second and shouldering the door open in even less time. The door caught the thief on either the back of the legs or the lower back. No matter which one, he stumbled into the sink. I followed suit and caught him around the neck with one arm, the other reaching over his shoulder to snatch at my jacket. He was wearing gym shorts. I was wearing no shorts. My body was pressed against the back of his leg. We seemed to both realize this at the same time, but I reacted first, taking a gamble that could have resulted in myself using the female restroom from that point on. I neither retreated nor adjusted, instead pressing myself against the guy all the more, and mouth very close to his ear, began shouting, "You know what that is. You know what that is." Over and over again, he choked out the mixed words of "what the F" in Jesus Christ, cast my jacket upon the floor, and tried to shake me off. His hostage, free from harm, I allowed him to do so, and he ran out. I managed to retain my decency before anyone else came in, and half an hour later, here I am. Story 2. My housemate decided she was letting these two 18-year-old guys stay at our house. She comes home early and turns her phone off. They come home later from their night out. 5 in the morning to be exact. 5 in the morning. Doorbell is ringing nonstop. Not a "it is late, so I will ring it" a few times. Just constant pressing of the bell as one of these two troublemakers pushes the button. I am livid. My window is directly above the door, so I stick my head out and ask them what they are doing. They explain the situation. I tell them I am not letting them in. I have never met these guys in my life, and to go back to their own house or ring my housemate, not knowing she had turned it off. Ding dong, they press again. Skinny fat and freckles glasses are going mad on the bell again. My heartbeat is through the roof, and I am storming the stairs like it is an invasion, and someone wronged me. These two guys are standing looking straight up at where they think my head is going to pop out this window again. They freak when the door opens to me, streaming a great plume of breath into the cold, into their faces. Because what they did not see from just my head sticking out of the window is that I am a 6'2", 230-pound, broken-nosed, hairy-chested, weightlifting rugby player. I am wearing nothing but the tightest of briefs, and I am shaking with anger as these two young guys recoil, realizing that I am not some friendly acquaintance, but someone woken from sleep by foolish noise. "Who disturbs me in this late hour?" I cry wildly to the night, the two taking steps back hurriedly. I advance. "You think of me as your servant, my domain your own, to hush you into my keep after such treatment." Their voices quiver in disbelief as I grasp their shoulders with large, rough hands. They wanted into this house. Now all they do is plead for me to let them leave. Story 3. I had just left my apartment to walk over to my buddy's place. I pulled out a pack of cigarettes and went to light up, and there were these two guys around 18 or so who just walked over and demanded my pack. Now, if they would have just said something like, "Hey mate, got a spare one?" I probably would have given him one, but he tried to snatch my pack out of my jacket pocket, and as I tried to stop him, he said to his buddy, "Get his wallet," and I just lost it. I grabbed this guy's shirt and just punched him as hard as I could in the nose and mouth a few times. He falls over backwards and starts actually crying, like he is 7 and skinned his knee. It was embarrassing and kind of made me feel bad, but that is what happens when you try to rob a stranger. They break your nose. His friend called me the psycho. Story 4. I take the train to and from work every day in New York City. One day I was getting home later than usual from work, which was late to begin with. I had to go to the bathroom, something fierce, and could not wait until I got to my apartment, so I accepted it and used the subway bathroom. While walking there out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a guy who was following about 10 paces behind me. I start to weave left and right, and he is still following me. I decide to stop short, pull out my phone, and pretend like I am looking at it. There were other people there, and I felt like if I stopped to do something unexpected, he would get the message, and if he were caught following me, he would know I knew he was behind me. He kept walking, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Thinking I was safe, I enter the bathroom and go. I get out a few minutes later, and he is there waiting for me, but again about 10 paces away. By this time, everyone who was on the train was now gone and up on the streets, so it was just us. Inside, I was terrified, but I could not show him that. I glance his way, then start to walk. He starts to follow me again. At this point, I put my hand in my bag. My father used to make me carry his knife because I worked late as a waitress at the time, and unsnap the sheath and start to finger the handle, terrified of the possibility of having to use it. At this point, I know full well he is following me. He bumps into my back, full body press, and I turn around and put the knife up to him and say, "If you touch me again, I will defend myself right here." I actually remember saying that. I gave him the coldest and steadiest look I could muster, but inside I was more scared than I have ever been in my entire life. Now, mind you, I am terrified of being hurt or harmed and am a general scaredy cat at all times. But I was born and raised in the city and do not play around when it comes to my safety. I was not going to get hurt, and I was not going to let anything happen in a subway station of all places. He looked stunned, stuttered, "I am sorry," and continued walking. My heart was beating a mile a minute. I was fully bracing myself for a confrontation of some sort, but he just walked away. It was a complete knee-jerk reaction, and I know that carrying a huge knife is not really a good idea because what if he had one too and it escalated? But thank goodness for my dad. Story 5. Long, long ago, I was a teenager and hanging with my friend at my favorite park. The park has a railway bridge about 40 to 50 feet above a shallow creek with a lot of large, nasty rocks. Unfortunately, it was known for having a few jumpers. My friend and I were by one end of the bridge, sitting on the embankment, when a teen girl walks up. As it was late night, we were wearing all black, as I said teenager, and we quieted up when she walked up. She did not notice us. She walked up to the end of the bridge and just kept staring down in a way that made me think she was debating jumping. I motioned to my friend and we walked up quietly behind her. "Long way down, isn't it?" I said from right behind her. She turned around startled and I just went on, looking down with a 100-mile stare. The worst part is halfway down you realize, oh God, I do not want this, but it is too late and you hit the bottom and then you feel the agony of your body against the rocks for what seems forever. She turns back and looks down, and while she is looking away, I grab my friend and we jump back down onto the embankment. So we are just a few feet away, but because of the darkness, the black clothing, and the steep angle, she does not see us when she turns back. She looks around frantically for a while and then just runs away. Story 6. I was a lacrosse goalie in high school, and I was pretty good and intense even though I was and am a 110-pound white girl from New Hampshire. Part of being goalie is being able to see the whole field and yell to my players things they cannot see or need to do, so I am really loud and raspy from yelling every day at this point. Anyway, so in girls lacrosse, around the goal is a circle which no one is allowed in, except for the goalie. This means not a step in, you cannot reach your stick in, nothing. If the ball is inside the crease, it is mine. A girl on the opposing team decided once to ignore this rule because the refs were like 100 and blind and went for a ball on the ground inside the crease at the same time as me. We both were trying to simultaneously get the ball with our sticks while stopping each other, and the whole time I was just yelling, "Crease, crease, crease," trying to get her to stop or at least get the ref's attention to the violation. Finally, I lose it and just stand up to my full 5'5", get right up in her face as close as we can be without my helmet touching her eye cage, and literally just scream like a crazy person, "Get out of my crease!" She is like a deer in the headlights because I have just gone full-out Rambo on her, so she steps back and literally drops her stick. I realize what I have done, and the little old lady ref just blows her whistle and says, "Crease violation, goalie's ball," and hands me the ball. My coach immediately called a timeout to check that I was okay, and she told me she thought I was going to eat the girl. I still love it. I thought I would be thrown out of the game for poor sportsmanship, and the girls on the other team were calling me intense for the rest of the game, but it was worth it. Story 7. I was on my way home from work when I received a garbled text from my girlfriend. I texted back and did not get an answer, so proceeded home like nothing had been sent and just figured she was drunk. When I arrived home, there was no one around, and after making myself dinner, I called her and asked where she was. She was drunk and accused me of cheating on her, so I hung up. I went to bed, and a little later that night, I awoke to her standing next to the bed shouting things like, "You think you are going to get away with this?" My eyes adjusted, and I saw that she had a knife and was beyond angry. She swung the knife at my face as I rolled away, and then I totally lost it. I do not remember everything clearly, but I know I hit her straight in the mouth and knocked her to the floor. She cut my foot pretty bad as I proceeded to try to get away. She ran after me with the knife and I hit her again this time, getting cut on my arm as she fell and passed out from the blow. When she woke up, I had the knife and had called the police. I sat on her chest with the knife to her face and said, "I will end this right now if you try to manipulate what happened. I have called someone and given him the address to your son's school and your mom's address. So if you expect me to go to jail because you are out of control, I will have them contacted." Needless to say, I scared myself with that comment, even though I never called anyone nor told them anything. I have never hit a woman before, but I feel that was justified and so did the police. But I have never seen that side of me and hope I never have to again. By the way, she was an awesome girlfriend up to this point, and I have no idea what happened. I talked to her once to give her the key, and that was it. I got out of there fast. The police took her away but decided there was not much more they could charge her with than assault with a deadly weapon. It cycled through the courts and she got a good lawyer. In the end, she got 2 years of probation. Story 8. I have a group of friends who are touring musicians. They would stay with my husband and me when they came through our town. Apparently, they acquired a stalker along the way that followed them through Europe and continued to do so through their United States leg. She had apparently left her husband and family to do this. She had gotten really aggressive and would approach the main guy that she was focused on. They had left her picture with the door guy so they would know not to let her in. They had taken out a restraining order in San Francisco, but could not get it served because of some time limit laws. I go out front of the bar to have a smoke, and I see her moving up the street. She is wearing gypsy-type clothing and sunglasses at night. Great, as I mentioned before, they are staying with us, and she is now at the venue. I tried to talk to her and asked her why she was doing this. She just kept repeating, "I am in the band." That was the only thing she would say to me. She got real close to the door, and the door guy was not being very observant. I could see this going badly pretty quickly, so I called the cops and told them the situation. Once they arrived, they talked to her, but could not really do anything. They told her to stay on the other side of the street from the bar. The guys finished their set, and they are loading up, and guess who shows back up and starts walking towards the van? I cut her off before she could get there and stood in front of her. I told her, "I think you should go now," very softly. She started repeating the "I am in the band" line again, and I became frustrated. Probably helped by the drinks, I really did not want this unstable person to know where we lived, nor did I want to go to jail for hitting her. My brain shrieked, "You must out-crazy her, do something unexpected." So I grabbed her face in one hand and moved my tongue from her chin to her forehead while she was in mid-sentence. I once again quietly said, "You should go," and pushed her away. She ran, and we were not bothered again that evening. The guys thought it was hilarious. Story 9. I was 7 or 8 years old, and I was walking home from school with my friend Laura. Laura was from Vietnam. She and her family had recently moved here. I was a pretty reserved, quiet, nerdy kid, so Laura and I kind of stuck together. A block or two after we left school, I got the feeling we were being followed. A few minutes later, these two popular fifth-grade girls came up behind us and started taunting Laura. They were pulling their eyelids to make them squinty and yelling things like, "Go back to your country." This made Laura cry. Really, really hard. Seeing her so upset made something inside of me snap. It was the angriest I think I have ever been in my entire life, and I am 21 now. I do not remember exactly what happened right after that. But I remember getting calm and looking down at one of the fifth graders. She was screaming and crying, and her entire face was covered with blood. I think one or two teeth were missing. I am also pretty sure she had to go to the hospital. From that point on, no one ever messed with Laura again. We did not really stay friends through middle school and beyond, but I heard she is working on her master's degree at the moment. Story 10. This was the first fight ever got into. This happened back in junior year of high school. I was walking back from lunch with my friends, and there was this one kid who I just did not like, tried to act tough all the time, huge ego, never knew when to shut up, and so on. We were walking, and out of nowhere, he tries to throw a snack-sized potato chip bag at me. Empty. Wind came by, and it hit him straight in the face. By coincidence, I also had an empty bag and rolled it up, walked in front of him, and gently let go, and it hit him in the face. At this point, he is furious, and we were just walking up the portable classroom ramp to get to class, and all I remember is him throwing a punch at me. I dodge it, and my immediate reaction was to throw one back, and he gets knocked to the ground. I think it is over, my heart racing, hoping no school officials saw, and this guy gets up and takes a brisk can and tries to slam it into my face. Now I am thinking, dear God, he is fighting dirty now, and dodge again, throw a punch, and this time we are inside the portable classroom. At this point, I am thinking there is no way he is going to try anything. The teacher is 20 feet away, but to my amazement, he gets back up. I think, what can I do to stop him, but not hurt him? He is charging at me. I grab both of his shoulders and yell, I just knocked you down twice. What makes you think you have a chance this time? He sits down. I sit down. He gets up 5 minutes into class, does not come back until the last 10 minutes, looking like he had a rough time, and I get a congratulations from the teacher. I also broke the bone right beneath my pinky on my right hand. Story 11. I am a very tiny girl, and I swear, last spring after leaving a Reddit meetup, I had to take the train home. It is extremely late at night. I am walking alone, and trains do not come as often. I get down to the bottom of the tunnels, and nobody is down there except 4 Brazilian guys. As I walk past them, I could hear they were saying something in Portuguese along the lines of, we will get her, we will get her. It is too late to notice. It is empty. Although I look purely Nordic, part of my family is also European Portuguese, and I heard a lot of it growing up. I started to panic. I tried to look like I did not notice, so I pretended to get my phone out of my bag. But I always kept a knife on me, even though I swore I could never do anything with it. It was early spring, so long sleeves still applied. Now one came up to me on my left, 2 behind me, and one who stayed behind to watch for people. They started saying all these disgusting things to me in English, and one started touching me, telling me to talk dirty to him. When the one next to me grabbed my wrist and one started charging, I let out the knife I had slipped up my right sleeve and dug it into the side of his thigh. He screamed and grabbed his leg, and I twisted it as hard as I could, and then he dropped to the ground. Here I was, holding this bloody little knife I took from my dad, with my dress covered in someone else's blood. I turned around to see the 2 behind me had stopped running at me, and I do not know what it was, but my adrenaline was pumping so hard I yelled back in Portuguese, asking how deep they wanted it, moving the knife in a twisting gesture. They had no idea I had understood them earlier. They froze in disbelief. I heard a train coming, so I threw the knife into the bottom of my now ruined bag, got on and left. I blankly stared at them in the window, pointing to them individually, mouthing 1, 2 to freak them out more while they grabbed their wounded friend. Nobody ever found out. Story never made the news. I left my knife in an enzyme wash at home in a bucket overnight, doused it in bleach, and threw it in a swamp the next day. Story 12. When I was 21, I was a student sharing a large house with 6 other guys. Many evenings, a few of us would gather in the living room and play board games or card games on the floor. Most of the guys were good people, though I shared the top story of the house with the one difficult person in the bunch. He never paid his share of the utilities. He made a point of playing bad music very loud on mornings he suspected anyone else of being hungover. He never knocked before barging through anyone else's closed door, even though he became upset if someone entered his room without permission, and so on. Fortunately, he was also a twerp in every sense of the word, not a medical dwarf, but far smaller than any of the rest of us. We were all actors to some degree, and he briefly held down an announcer's job at the radio station, where I did the same thing. While trying to argue for some new interpretation of the rules to a game we had played dozens of times before, he took to yelling. I guess he thought he could intimidate the rest of us into simply agreeing to give him a huge advantage. I patiently let him shout in my face for a good minute or two. Then I literally sat on my hands before leaning toward him and demonstrating what a full-size set of pipes sounds like at top volume. Between the fact that I continued to argue against him and the way my voice dramatically exceeded his best efforts at being loud, something snapped. His little hands were on my throat, squeezing hard. Even if I was not near death's door, I knew long-term damage could be done if he kept applying pressure where his thumbs were bearing down. Yet my hands were not readily available for retaliation. I did the only thing I could think to do: roll backwards while kicking out with my legs. Because the small tyrant kept his grip on my throat for much of this roll, the extension of my legs caught him in the chest or stomach. In the next instant, he was flying up and away, still rotating a little from the shared roll as well. In comical fashion, with his feet toward the ceiling and his head near the floor, he smashed into a wall 20 to 30 feet away. It was probably my adrenaline distorting time, but it really seemed like he clung to the wall for a moment before sliding down and hitting his head on the floor. Having ripped his shirt in the process of launching him away from me, the little jerk had the nerve to start talking about cops and lawsuits as he rose to his feet and started back toward me. Fortunately, there were at least 4 witnesses who saw that I only made one hostile move, and that was after his grip was firm on my throat. I was tempted to mock him, but he looked too pathetic being restrained by our mutual friends and ranting about my unprovoked attack. I have not been in anything resembling a physical fight since that evening, yet I was both relieved and a little proud that this profoundly obnoxious guy was uncharacteristically polite and deferential to me whenever our paths crossed after that night. Story 13. Now is my time to shine. I had an apartment really close to the bar. It was a Friday night, and I had just worked 60-plus hours that week and was not interested in going out. My cousin, on the other hand, was set on going out to the bar that night and wanted me to go with him. I respectfully declined many times, but he was persistent. About 20 minutes after I had finished telling him no on the phone, I hear a knock at my door. Now, to describe my apartment, the staircase went up the outside of the building with all the doors accessible from the stairs. There were no hallways or anything like that. My front door led right outside. So I answer the door. It is my cousin and his friend. They are begging me to come out to the bar with them. I keep telling them no, and eventually they leave. I watch television for a bit, then head to bed. End of story. Right, wrong. I wake up suddenly to voices yelling and counting down from 3. My bedroom is right next to the front door, so I can always hear drunk people hanging out outside. Still half asleep, and I do not really know what is going on. Then they get to 1, and I hear this huge bang. Sounded like something blew up. It is about 3 in the morning. I jump out of bed, fully awake, and open my bedroom door. It is my cousin and his friend, and they have just kicked open my front door. I was livid. I grabbed my cousin by his throat and threw him outside. I was going to knock both of them down right then, but my cousin's friend told me to calm down, and they backed away slowly up the stairs. I thought, why are they going upstairs? Well, apparently my upstairs neighbor was having a party, and when my drunk cousin and his drunk friend came to wake me up, they went up to my neighbor's house to party and tried to impress some girls by kicking in my front door. I have never been so mad in my life. I was pacing back and forth with clenched fists and swearing, contemplating what to do next. I was going to call the cops, but it was family, so after about 2 hours, I calmed down enough to go to bed. Morning comes, and I get a chance to look at the damage. The whole frame of the door exploded off the wall, and the door was unable to lock or fully shut anymore. I drove over to my cousin's house, got him out of bed and told him to fix my door. Unsuccessful, of course. Eventually a maintenance guy came and had to replace the whole door and frame. Story 14. On my way home from work one night, I am a chef. It was 1:30 in the morning. I came to a T intersection with a stop sign on the road that shoots off. I had no stop sign. This high school girl was texting and ran the sign. Came out right in front of me. I hit the horn and slammed on my brakes. She also slammed on her brakes. Both of us are stopped, me inches from her driver's side door. Her window was open, phone still in hand. I got out of my car, walked up to her car. She was shaking. I did not say a word, stared at her for about 10 seconds, then quickly reached in and grabbed her phone from her hand. She flinched, thinking I was going to hit her. I placed her phone on the ground, reached in again, and took the keys out of the ignition, tossed them as far as I could, still silent. I got back in my car, backed up a bit, and slowly drove around her while staring at her. She had tears in her eyes. She needed that moment. Later I found out she is a friend of a friend's daughter. Someone actually told me the story about how their friend's daughter was put in her place about 2 weeks after the incident. She snuck out and took her parents' car without permission. She had to call her parents and explain what happened that night as she could not find her keys. She was supposed to get that car for her birthday. This was 3 years ago. She still has no car, and her parents, who eventually were introduced to me after I admitted it was me, thanked me. I still love seeing her reaction when I rang the doorbell and she answered the door. She is still nervous around me. I am 6 feet and have a serious beard. Not the friendliest looking fellow. I am proud. I have more intense stories of the few bar fights I have been in. But this is so personal as I stop by and have a beer with her dad once in a while now that we know each other, and I can still see the surprise in her eyes every time. Story 15. Took my friend, let us call her Mary, to a party a while back because she wanted to go but did not really know very many people there. She starts talking to this guy, let us call him Rick, and they get really close, sharing a chair, talking really close to each other, and so on. They might have made out at that party. I do not know. Anyway, they exchange numbers, and then I take her back to her house and crash on the couch. This guy is big, 6'4", bodybuilder, long flowing hair. He could be a model. Explains why she was attracted to him. I am not very big, 5'8" on a good day, stocky, and so on. Turns out the guy is one of those people who relies on looks alone to get girls interested in him. He is also one of those guys who gets really aggressive when you push back. She tells me a day or two later that he has no personality, so I figure that is that. A week or so later, I am at a bar with one of my high school friends, and I see him there with his friend. Do not really know the guy, so I do not acknowledge his presence. I get a text from Mary saying what is going on. Rick sent me this text, and then follows it up with a screenshot of their conversation. Basically, he said, "Look like your friend. So-and-so hooks up with bar strangers," and so on. She responds with, "What are you talking about?" Then he proceeds to call her insulting names. My best friend and I go up to him and call him out on it. He instantly folds like a napkin, saying he was sorry and would not do it again. Half an hour later, I get another screenshot from Mary, seeing that he was back at his old game. Later that night, I send him a message saying that if he did it again, I would put a stop to it. He brags about it online, saying I am weak and that Mary is a terrible person. Mary is super sweet, super nice, and so on. She is like my little sister. It is on. So later the next week, I see him again at a bar while I am with Mary. I told Mary not to approach him, and if Rick said anything to her, I would give him the aforementioned treatment. I step out for a cigarette, and when I come back, Mary's crying. I instantly knew what was up. So I see Rick sitting on some bleachers. The bar was also a concert hall near the stage, chatting up some girls. I run up on him, grab him by his hair, and hold his head down to the bleacher behind him, then speak firmly in his ear. If you so much as look at her wrong, I will end this problem. Again, he folds like a napkin. Tap his head against the bleacher and walk off. Justice is served, and it was dished out by a man who is almost a foot shorter than that guy. Mary and her friends have a good time, and I look like the hero. Yay me. Finally, the bar closes, and I am outside with Mary and her friends. Mary's friend, let us call her Tina, is chatting with his friend when he rolls up to pick him up. I do not acknowledge his presence because I already told him once. He is in the passenger seat and starts talking badly about me from the car. I calmly put out my cigarette, then reach for the door handle of the car. He locks it, so I reach through the back window and grab him by his hair one more time. That time, I believe I pulled a chunk of it out. My initial plan was to pull him out of the car and stop him, but that did not work so well. He rolls up the window and reacts loudly. No more than 3 minutes later, he pulls the same thing. With my left hand, I grab him by the collar of his shirt. With my right hand, I am actively reaching in the car to unlock the door. At that point, the driver of the car speeds off, leaving their friend at the bar. I look at my hand. There is a large chunk of his t-shirt in my clenched fist. Story 16. It was my 21st birthday. About halfway through the night, this guy shows up that I found irritating beyond belief, but I could tolerate his presence. He was not only uninvited but told not to come by me. When I see he shows up with some mutual friends, I think, are you serious? Forget it. I am not going to disturb the peace. Everybody's having a good time. About an hour passes and I hear yelling outside. I look out the kitchen window and this guy and a couple female friends of mine are yelling at each other. Naturally, I went outside to find out what is going on. I separated them and asked each of their stories and found out that my two female friends were pouring out a beer for our buddy that died of diabetic causes a few years back. Some of their beer, I guess, had splashed onto the uninvited guy's shoes, and he started having a fit. "What did you do? You got beer on my shoes," was his reaction. My friends explained what they were doing, and he said, "Forget our friend and forget diabetes." I told him he needed to get out now. He starts saying he needs to find his glasses because he dropped them on the ground. So I wait about 30 seconds before I start speaking inches from this guy's face that he needs to leave before he gets hurt and that he did not want to challenge me and so on. In hindsight, it was extremely over macho, but I am a former Marine, and that stuff slips out from time to time, and there is not much I can do about it. Anyway, he stands up straight, looks me in the eye, smirks, and says, "Forget you, skull full of bong hits." I grabbed him by the throat and placed the back of his head against the side of my house a bunch of times. I was seeing red. I started striking as hard as I could into his gut and grabbed him by the head and moved him into the house, at which point 6 of my friends pulled him away until he got carried out. Needless to say, the party went on and everybody had a great night except the uninvited guy. Story 17. Back when I was in high school, there was this guy who I will call Travis. Travis liked to act inappropriate to annoy people. He used to always rub up against people, talk about things to provoke reactions, and come to think of it, he probably was hiding something and using it as a cover. Anyway, one day him and his friend were going around harassing people like usual, and they came up to me and started rubbing my chest. I told them to back off, and when they did not, I stood up straight, looked him right in the eye, and said with a serious tone, "Please leave me alone." They stopped. All was well. Not 5 minutes later, they decided they needed to get me. Travis's friend came up behind, grabbed and held my arms while Travis rubbed himself on my leg and pretended to act out loudly. This made me snap, and I wanted to stop this guy. Now, I have never been in a fight in my life, and I have never been involved with any kind of boxing or form of combat practice. I am 6 foot 70 kilogram, skinny guy with glasses, and apparently I activated my hidden mode. I slipped out of the arm bind with ease and lunged towards Travis, put an arm around his chest, wrapped my foot behind his legs, and pushed my shoulder into him, instantly knocking him down. I fell with him because he wrapped his arms around me as he fell, and my glasses went flying off. I was still on top, so I flung my arm back really far in an attempt to wind up a massive punch. I made a fist and threw all of my energy into this one punch aimed for his face. There would have been at least 12 other people. Friends of ours, all knew both of us, sitting around and watching with disbelief. All of them completely shocked at the scene that was unfolding in front of them. It was lucky that Travis's friend did not join in the shocked crowd because I do not know what I was capable of. I wanted to hurt him. His friend had run over in time and grabbed my arms, holding me back once again and prevented me from ever throwing a punch. A teacher came running over shouting at us, and I calmly got up, picked up my glasses, put them on, and said to the teacher, "It is fine. We are just playing," with a huge grin on my face. I think that moment secured my title as "Do Not Mess with That Nerd" for the rest of my high school life. Story 18, senior year in high school, I was taking a shower after football practice. I was the too cool kid that was above the annoying high school scene because I was dating a college girl, and that clearly made me superior. So I am lathering up minding my own business when I see a junior cornering a freshman between a row of lockers and giving him some pretty harsh slaps to the freshman's bare skin, like leaving big red handprints on the kid's back for no apparent reason. The freshman was pretty annoying most of the time, but I could see that he was starting to crack, and despite trying to play it off like a joke, It was obviously both painful and embarrassing. So anyway, I decide to get all tough about it because I have quite the mean streak of my own. And I figure if anyone needs some bullying, it is this bully. I say that is enough. Nothing. Just more joking and harsh slaps. I say one more time, I am not kidding, knock it off. He responds, what are you going to do about it? I am still covered head to toe in soap bubbles, but I lose my control and bolt straight for him. He sees I am not kidding and runs straight out of the locker room. When I catch up to him, I tackle him in the hallway, still covered in soap. From either the fear of me striking him, the fact I was super soapy, or the awkwardness of being tackled like that caused him to give up, and he took his retribution slap to the face calmly. Story 19. I would like to preface this comment with a few quick notes. The first is that I am not a good person. I am jaded, bitter, mean, defensive, angry, and just an unpleasant person to be around too, pretty much anyone who has not earned my trust. I know it sounds incredibly self-centered and narcissistic, but forget you. The second is that I do not mess around when it comes to my safety. I fought in Afghanistan and learned the hard way not to take any situation for granted. Lastly, I live an unfortunately interesting life. For better or worse, things are always happening to or around me. Around this time last year, I was walking back from a get-together with some old friends from high school. Nothing major, just a beer and a tough game of Risk. My friend's place was in one of the less hospitable parts of the current city I reside in. So before heading out, I made sure to bring my insurance along, and by that I mean my compact .45 pistol. Baby Ruth, as I call her, was nestled in an underarm holster by my side, moving along with me as I walked. I was enjoying the cool night air and the sounds of passing cars as I traveled to my own vehicle when someone approached me from behind. I had already heard them coming, but did not really think much of it. I had figured they were going to their own car or something. How naive of me. The next thing I know, I am being pushed against my door and struck across my back and shoulders. After he connects with the back of my head once, driving my face into my car and busting my nose and eyebrow up, I managed to push myself away from my vehicle. My attacker staggered back only to try and come at me again. Joke's on him, though, because in that brief moment I had drawn my weapon and leveled it right at his face. The look on his face was priceless, nothing but sheer terror. His eyes were like two big dinner plates. I suppose I must have been equally a sight to behold, with blood running down my face and a big smile running across it. If there is anything in this world I hate literally more than anything else, it is a thief, and when one attempts to take advantage of me in the dark, in a strange city, they had better bring more than their empty fists to the fight. I cocked the hammer back on my pistol, still smiling and bleeding, hoping beyond hope that this person tried to come at me again. Fortunately for the both of us, he did not, though. He simply continued to stare at me blankly. As my adrenaline subsided, I thought that perhaps it would be a good idea to turn the tables a little bit. I took his wallet, pants, and shoes before making him turn around, get on his knees and plead for mercy, swearing to never steal or mug anyone again. I was about to let this person go when I had one last thought. I made him get up and turn around to face me. Staring him in the eyes, weapon still pointed at him, I reach up and pulled the slide back, throwing the chambered bullet up in the air. I caught the unspent round and tossed it at his chest and said, "This one is free. The next one will cost you a whole lot more." I got in my car, called the cops, and left. Story 20. I am a female martial artist, and I regularly deal with guys with no training who think they can beat me up because I am a girl. But this one guy was the worst. It was a college class, so we had a huge range of skill levels. We were paired up, white belt beginner versus black belt me, and started sparring. At first he refused to hit me, odd, misguided chivalry or whatever, but became visibly upset when it became clear that I had no inhibitions about hitting him. He just started to glare, and then started trying to hit me as hard as he could. When you spar, the general rule is light contact, but this person, who was much bigger than me, was trying to knock me out. Of course, he had no training, and I could see him coming from a mile away. I said something along the lines of light contact, "We are not boxing," and he made some joke about me being a little girl who could not face a real man. So on his next big clumsy punch, I spun in and moved him across the room, followed him down and got him in an arm lock on the ground. He started cursing loudly, using insults and so on, so I just kept applying pressure. I had him right before the point when I would have caused real injury. He started crying, and I laughed and called him a little girl before I let him go. The instructors removed him from the class after. Nobody bothered me after that. Story 21, I was at my apartment early one morning, getting prepared to go into work. My friend, let us call her Jennifer, called me. It was strange because we worked at the same place, but different shifts, and 8 in the morning was usually still sleepy time for her. She was in tears. Her boyfriend had woken her up on this day, her 20th birthday, to inform her that he had lied about having a job for the past few months and had been using her half of the rent money to buy and use substances. He had also been hiding the notices that said they were late on rent. That particular morning, there was a note on the door that he could not hide. This was the last day of their eviction process, and they had 3 hours to vacate the premises. She told me all this in tears, with the boyfriend shouting in the background. I was upset. Jen was one of my best friends, and no one should be treated the way she was. I proceeded to go to their apartment. When I arrived, the note was still taped to their door, and inside I could hear him yelling and ranting, trying to make it sound as if it were somehow her fault that this was happening. I did not even try the lock. My steel-toed boot connected with their apartment door, tearing part of the frame from the wall and sending the door flying wide open. He was facing away from me, in the hallway, shouting at Jen about how she could not leave. With the door open, he turned to look at me as I regained my balance and moved toward him, full force. He barely had time to say what before my right hand connected with his face in an open palm slap that sent him to the floor. I am a rather large man, and he was not. But I had no respect for him prior to this event, and knowing what he had been doing fueled my anger to a level I had not and have not since experienced. His defense for my first action was to lay on the floor, looking at me with wide-eyed confusion. I put my knees onto his shoulders and began hitting his face, hands landing heavy blows. Every so often, he would start to say something, and when he did, I struck him purposefully in the mouth. I do not know what happened around me at this point. My anger had become so focused, so intense, that nothing seemed to exist outside of me and him, locked in a one-sided confrontation that could have ended very badly. I do not know for how long I continued this. He eventually fell unconscious from repeated blows, but still I kept going. Never in my life have I experienced such a pure anger for another human being. Apparently, Jen called my friend Stephen, who was staying at my apartment at the time. Suddenly, I was off of him, and everything snapped back into focus. Stephen, all 290-pound bowling ball of him, had rushed in and shoved me off. I looked up at him, confused as to where he had come from, and looked back at him. His face was severely injured. Teeth and blood were everywhere, including in my hands. When my senses returned, I began to feel the pain shooting from them and realized that I had not only broken both my hands in several places, but had cuts from pieces of tooth that were still sticking in them. He was unrecognizable. His breathing was erratic, and when he breathed out, he would cough and spit blood. As it finally dawned on me what exactly I had done, we fled. Stephen hopped in his car and I into mine. Jen called me a few weeks later. He did not remember who had confronted him and said he had no desire to press charges. This was due to him having a large amount of substances on his person at the time it happened. Police assumed it was substance-related violence, and Jen was not arguing the point. He had to have his face surgically reconstructed. I went home and removed tooth fragments from my hands with tweezers and soaked them in alcohol. That was almost unbearable, but I did not have to go to the hospital. I still have some trouble with my left hand hurting sometimes, and I think it was from injuring them on that day. Story 22. After my freshman year of college, I opted to move into a house with 2 buddies for the summer, my other option being to move back in with my parents in the small rural community I grew up in, the type of place where people do not lock their doors, everyone knows everyone, and so on. The city where my college is has a fair amount of crime. I went to a big state school, something I really knew nothing about, having been conditioned to trust people and not anticipate danger. So one night about 10 at night, I decided to make a Walmart run for some groceries. Unusual, I know, but it seemed like a bright idea to this 19-year-old. I would generally park my Jeep Cherokee in our drive behind the house, just off the back porch, which was fairly well lit. So I yelled at my roommates that I am heading out to Walmart and continued out the back door. Stepped off my back porch, took the 10 steps to my Jeep, and got my keys handy to unlock the driver's side door. Suddenly, the door pops open just as I approach to unlock it. A guy I have never seen before jumps out holding my new CD player. It was MP3 capable, which was impressive at the time, in one hand and a flathead screwdriver about 18 inches long in the other. I was kind of in shock. It did not immediately register with me what was going on, and so I just froze. After a second or two, I was between him and his escape route. It hits me what is happening, and I say to him to drop it, which he responded to by attempting to stab toward me with a screwdriver. Both of us are now in defensive stances about 3 feet from each other when he threw the screwdriver at me, hit me in the face, and took off running into the night, seed player still in hand. I chase after him. I was a 3-sport high school athlete and collegiate wide receiver, yelling that I will stop you as I started to gain steps on him. I am not a hateful person at all. Blind panic completely took over, and I said what I thought would hit the hardest. 5 blocks of pursuit, and I am closing in on him. I am about 30 feet away from him, my voice becoming increasingly frantic. He ran and turned left, and I decided to cut the corner of the block and run behind the house on the corner. Ran into an 8-foot-tall chain-link fence. He got away. I yelled out in frustration, like in an action movie. If I had a noisemaker, I would have fired it into the air. I am sure, had I caught up to him, it would have been a dangerous confrontation. I turned back to go home and call the cops, exhausted, and realize I am in the roughest neighborhood I have ever seen. I am missing a shoe, bleeding from my right cheek and still clutching my car keys. Called the cops, who brought dogs and traced my pursuit, trying to pick up his scent, but no luck. Story 23. I was in southern Thailand traveling with 2 mates last summer. We were in a small town for just one night and managed to find the tourist hotel where most Western travelers would go to. For some reason, I just could not sleep that night, and my friends had fallen asleep hours ago. At about 2 in the morning, I heard some strange noises outside our door, and my initial thoughts were not that it was people being intimate. But after I snuck out the door to investigate, sure enough, people were definitely being intimate, sounding like just round the corner. It was a dark and still night, but the moon was out, and my eyes could adjust after a short while. It was actually down this corridor, and in the bathroom. The building echoed due to the concrete surfaces. Quite eerie at night. So I snuck into the men's toilets and showers, and they were going on and off in the first cubicle on the right in the row of 5. I noticed 2 bare feet sticking out the bottom in a strange angle, and so I really could not visualize the way in which they were positioned. But anyway, I was a meter away from the door, and my heart was pounding. What would I do if the door suddenly opened? Before thinking about it much, I made a quick decision. I was going to joke around a bit. They were rustling around, but it was not loud enough for them to be fully active at that moment, so I assumed they were being close, but quiet. I inhaled a long breath slowly through my nose, then exhaled. They stopped what they were doing. It could have been by coincidence, but I knew they had heard me. With my right hand, I reached out and tapped one of their ankles. They were both startled, the door was rattling, and as I stepped back, I heard them reacting nervously and climbing up onto the toilet seat. I had even startled myself at how unsettling I was preying upon their fear. But it felt mischievously funny. They were quiet now, and I walked down the corridor of cubicles, silently into the communal showers, which no light could reach. I waited a very long 15 minutes before I heard them move again. They assumed I had left, and the door slowly opened, with a head poking out to check it was clear. Guy then girl, one after the other, they tiptoed out holding their clothes. They had only put their underwear on by the looks of it. Just as the girl glanced round to look down the dark corridor, I walked towards her, chin down, looking right at her. Never have I seen a look of pure white shock come across a person's face like this. She let out a sharp scream as she dropped everything and ran for the door. I could hear them both still reacting loudly as they reached the door to their room and locked it. I crept back to my room, snuck under the duvet, and fell asleep. Story 24. My first summer job was washing and cleaning airplanes at my local airport. My boss was a difficult Scottish man who would constantly pick on me because I was the youngest girl on the team. One night after a particularly busy shift of planes landing and taking off, we had a hectic rush of turnarounds to do. A turnaround is when a plane lands, all the passengers get off, we clean it quickly, and a load of new passengers would board. So we waited at the bottom of the steps ready to board this one plane. It was an Airbus, a 320. I was on the piggy vacuum, a vacuum which is carried like a rucksack on your back, and you basically plug into the galley power and race down the aisle, cleaning up all the crumbs in between the seats, underneath and on top of the seats. A proper vacuuming should take around 15 to 20 minutes, but the number one air hostess insisted that we did not need to do a deep clean and that she needed to turn the plane around in 10 minutes or they would miss their departure slot. She told me to go quickly down the aisle and just get the bits I could see. So I did. She was happy and was just about to sign off on the job, and then the difficult boss comes along and grabs me by my ear and pulls me down the plane, pointing out what a poor job I had done. The stewardess was like, "It is fine. Just get off my plane. I am happy. Goodbye." But the boss made me re-clean the entire plane. The stewardess was then urging me to hurry up. My boss was shouting. I had loads of pressure on me. And then I noticed a busload of passengers waiting to come up the steps to board the plane. I finished and the boss swore at me and called me foolish before he started walking down the steps himself. I do not know to this day what made me tap him in the back of his head, but I did, and he fell down the steps and landed unconscious on the tarmac at the bottom. My colleagues stood there open-mouthed. The stewardess stood there open-mouthed, and 150 passengers stood there open-mouthed. The plane did not depart for over an hour. I walked back to my scooter and rode home. Do not know what happened to him. Do not care. Never have I ever reacted that way since. Story 25. A girl I used to live with as a friend was threatened with a knife in her apartment by her ex. I was waiting outside since she had told me that the guy was violent and had struck her before on more than one occasion. I thought it would be safest for her. I see the guy enter, and about 10 seconds later, I hear my friend screaming for help at the top of her lungs that he had pulled a knife on her. I ran upstairs as quick as I could, and in this time I put my leather gloves on. As I was unarmed, I remembered that I had bought a small stone statue that day that was in my right jacket pocket. It would have to do as a last resort if needed, but I sure was hoping that it was not going to be necessary. By the time I get into the kitchen of her place, she is huddled up in a little heap in the corner, most likely terrified of this guy, and he is standing over her with a 6 to 7 inch kitchen knife. He sees me enter with the gloves on, hands raised up for defense, and every now and then feeling my right jacket pocket for a good grip on the statue if needed. He saw that I was not someone he could intimidate in that situation, so after some words back and forth, he ran off and left the knife on his way. He was arrested the following day when he tried to come back to her apartment. The guy was a bit shorter than me, but outweighed me by at least 15 to 20 kilograms. She was a tiny 5'2" to 3 or something gal. I am so upset at these people who can be all mean and scary towards a small young woman, but even with a big knife will not go for the guy who is 6'4". Her mother wanted to put me in the papers for helping her daughter, but that publicity would not have helped anyone. I am happy that I did what I did though, and no one got hurt, which is the most important part. Story 26. When I was in school, I moved around a lot and was usually bullied because of my sexual orientation. I lived in a pretty rural part of the state, so tolerance of these things was pretty low. One day I am walking home from school, and I noticed this one boy who always called me names or threw things at me from across the hall was following me home. I knew he was up to something because he lived pretty much on the complete opposite side of town. At first I ignored him and continued about my way until he grabbed my backpack from behind, talking about how he was going to hurt me for being a disgusting perv. I calmly turn around and assertively state that I will not be spoken to in such a manner. This obviously makes him mad because he tries to give me a left to the face. What he fails to realize is that I am the only boy in my family of intense females. My mother taught me how to defend myself in unexpected ways. While he clumsily tries to punch me, I react with a quick kick to stop him, and when he dropped to his knees, I reacted again to keep him from getting up. When he was completely horizontal, I kind of lost control and reacted a few more times. I was pretty heated, so I was doing this as firmly as I could each time. I broke his nose and knocked some teeth loose. I was shouting at the top of my lungs when I told him if he ever put his hands on me again, he would lose them. Shortly after my rant, the police arrived. Luckily for me, there were witnesses who saw him try and punch me first. That in addition to him being written up in school for bullying me multiple times, pretty much saved me. I was at the time charged with assault because it was pretty clear I defended myself strongly. Not only did his parents ask for the charges to be dropped, but the judge also made it known that she felt that I was defending myself since he was older and larger than me, and there was documentation stating that I had been bullied by him. The only downside to this was that the school made me see a therapist before I came back. I am usually a nonviolent person, so I was pretty surprised at what I was capable of when I lost control. I also felt pretty bad because I felt that I went a little too far. He did not bother me for the rest of the year, and I changed schools by the start of next year. Story 27 years ago, I am shopping in a Costco or something. Huge, I do not remember. Anyways, you know how you get in a rhythm, in a route, down this aisle, up that, predictable, right? So there is this family that is also doing a similar route to me. We cross paths frequently. Mom and toddler and little troublesome son. He is knocking stuff off shelves, shouting at his mom, generally being difficult. When she tries to get him to behave, he shouts at her that she is not his real mom and makes wild accusations. He runs into me and my cart a few times while he is doing his thing, and I politely ask him to watch where he is going, and he swears at me like an adult with no filter. Utter entitled behavior, sure that nobody can do anything to him. So mom is a couple of aisles over, and I am heading down a dead-end aisle. The lighting is bad and the shelves go up to the ceiling, forklift high. And I see this little kid at the end of the aisle, urinating in the corner, just letting it go on everything. There is a bathroom just a few aisles over. Anyways, he hears my cart, looks back at me over his shoulder, turns back to what he is doing, and extends one arm back toward me, finger extended. I have had it with this kid. Just so happens we are in the kitchen aisle. I leave my cart, walk to a display chopping block, and remove the biggest knife there is. I walk up behind this kid. He is still standing there, back to me, finger still up. I lean down on his left shoulder. I extend my arm with the knife over his right shoulder. His posture freezes. I am a larger man, 6'6", and he is maybe 10 years, 4 feet tops. In my deepest voice, I say that we are going to have a little chat. I move the knife slightly so the light reflects off it. He tries to be brave and says I cannot do anything. I let out a dramatic laugh and ask who is going to stop me and make a comment about self-defense. Little guy is terrified as I wave the knife around slowly. He tries one last bit and says his mom will find out. I spin him around with a little more force than necessary, hold him by the collar, crouch down, and bring the knife to eye level. I tell him to stop behaving this way or there will be serious consequences. Then I guide him down the aisle with a tap to get him moving, put the knife away, and go back to shopping. Only saw him once more. He was glued to his mom's side and not uttering a peep. I just smiled at him. He looked away quickly. I have no idea what got into me. I love kids and have no temper to speak of, but I really needed to scare this kid. I hope it smartened him up a bit. I am also really glad he was a little troublemaker who nobody would believe because that was a pretty dumb thing I did. Story 28. 16-year-old me was walking down the road back from a bar in a relatively dangerous area. I remember starting out with 4 friends and not realizing we were being followed at all because we were joking around in that carefree way you do when you are young and distracted. After we separated and went our different ways, I cut through an alley and suddenly 5 guys were right in front of me, one holding a knife. I remember the person who seemed like the leader having an intense look in his eyes with colors that made me think he might be on something. He was tall, close to 1.90 meters, and he told me he wanted a new phone and was looking for a fight. Dumb drunk me responded without understanding the danger until it hit me that they were serious. I remembered a nature show I had seen about a tiger ambushing its prey, and something about that memory flipped a switch in my mind. I closed in on the first guy and fought back wildly, not with technique but with frantic instinct, until one of the others struck me and everything blurred for a moment. I stumbled backward, disoriented, and another memory from the same show flashed through my mind of a tiger backing away while keeping its eyes on danger. That was enough for me to take off running. I ran as fast as I could, and my mind cleared as I got farther away. I cleaned my hands with some leaves and water from a garden area where I stopped to catch my breath. I think it had rained.